If you or someone close to you is dealing with high blood sugar, prediabetes, or type 2 diabetes, this video could genuinely change the way you look at your next meal, because what we're about to share are the exact foods doctors and nutrition experts point to again and again when it comes to supporting healthy blood sugar levels. This isn't about a fad diet or a quick gimmick. This is about real, practical food choices backed by nutrition science, and by the end of this video, you'll have a clear picture of what to put on your plate starting with your very next meal. Stay with us until the end, because some of the foods we're about to cover are ones most people completely overlook, even though they make a real difference. Let's start by understanding why food choices matter so much when it comes to blood sugar. Every time you eat, your body breaks down carbohydrates into glucose, which enters your bloodstream and causes your blood sugar to rise. In response, your pancreas releases insulin, a hormone that helps move that glucose out of your blood and into your cells where it can be used for energy. When this system works smoothly, blood sugar levels rise and fall in a fairly controlled, gentle way throughout the day. But certain foods cause blood sugar to spike very quickly and very high, forcing your body to work much harder to bring those levels back down. Choosing foods that support a slower, steadier rise in blood sugar is one of the most powerful tools available for managing this process. The first category worth talking about is non-starchy vegetables, and these deserve to be at the center of almost every meal. Leafy greens like spinach and kale, along with vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, zucchini, and bell peppers, are naturally low in carbohydrates and high in fiber. Fiber is incredibly important here because it slows down how quickly sugar enters your bloodstream, which means these vegetables have a minimal effect on blood sugar levels while still providing volume, nutrients, and satisfaction on your plate. Filling half your plate with these kinds of vegetables at most meals is one of the simplest, most effective habits for supporting stable blood sugar over time. Next, let's talk about leafy greens specifically, because they deserve a bit more attention on their own. Spinach, kale, Swiss chard, and similar greens are packed with magnesium, a mineral that plays a direct role in how your body processes insulin. Some research has linked magnesium deficiency with a higher risk of insulin resistance, which is part of why leafy greens are so frequently recommended by doctors and dietitians working with patients managing blood sugar concerns. Whether eaten raw in a salad, lightly sautéed, or blended into a smoothie, leafy greens are one of the easiest additions to make to almost any meal of the day. Now let's move on to fatty fish, which is another category doctors frequently highlight. Salmon, mackerel, sardines, and similar fish are rich in omega-3 fatty acids, which have been associated with reduced inflammation in the body. Chronic inflammation is increasingly understood to play a role in insulin resistance, meaning that reducing inflammation through diet can be a meaningful piece of the broader blood sugar picture. Beyond the omega-3 content, fatty fish also contains very few carbohydrates, making it an excellent protein source that won't cause significant blood sugar spikes on its own. Eggs are another food worth discussing, since they're incredibly accessible and versatile. Eggs are essentially carbohydrate-free, meaning they have very little direct impact on blood sugar, while providing high-quality protein that helps you feel full and satisfied. Starting your day with eggs instead of high-carbohydrate breakfast options like sugary cereals or pastries is a switch that many doctors recommend specifically because of how it affects blood sugar throughout the rest of the morning, often leading to more stable energy levels and reduced cravings later in the day. Let's talk about nuts next, because they offer a unique combination of healthy fats, fiber, and protein. Almonds, walnuts, and pistachios in particular have been studied for their potential role in supporting healthy blood sugar levels. The fiber and fat content in nuts slows down digestion, which helps prevent the kind of rapid blood sugar spike that can happen with more refined, carbohydrate-heavy snacks. Nuts also make for an excellent portable snack option, since a small handful can provide lasting satisfaction without dramatically affecting blood sugar. Beans and legumes deserve their own moment of attention as well, because they're often underappreciated in conversations about blood sugar. Lentils, chickpeas, black beans, and kidney beans are high in both fiber and protein, a combination that significantly slows the absorption of sugar into the bloodstream. Despite containing carbohydrates, the fiber content in beans means they tend to have a much gentler effect on blood sugar compared to refined carbohydrates like white bread or white rice. Beans are also incredibly versatile, fitting easily into soups, salads, or serving as a plant-based protein source in countless dishes. Whole grains are worth discussing carefully, because this is an area where many people get confused. Not all grains are created equal when it comes to blood sugar. Refined grains, like white rice, white bread, and many packaged cereals, have had much of their natural fiber stripped away during processing, which means they tend to spike blood sugar quickly. Whole grains, on the other hand, like quinoa, oats, brown rice, and barley, retain their natural fiber content, which slows digestion and leads to a much more gradual rise in blood sugar. Simply swapping refined grains for whole grain alternatives is one of the most practical changes someone can make without dramatically overhauling their entire diet. Let's talk about berries next, since fruit often raises questions for people focused on blood sugar. While many fruits contain natural sugars, berries like blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, and blackberries tend to be lower in sugar compared to many other fruits, while also being high in fiber and antioxidants. This combination means berries generally have a gentler effect on blood sugar than fruits with higher sugar content, making them a smart choice for those who want something naturally sweet without a significant blood sugar spike. Avocados are another food frequently mentioned in this context, largely because of their unique nutritional profile. Avocados are low in carbohydrates while being rich in healthy monounsaturated fats and fiber. This combination not only supports stable blood sugar on its own, but avocados can also help slow the digestion of other foods when eaten together in the same meal, which is part of why pairing avocado with carbohydrate-containing foods is a strategy some nutritionists recommend for softening the overall blood sugar impact of a meal. Greek yogurt, particularly the plain, unsweetened variety, is another food worth highlighting. It's rich in protein and contains probiotics that support gut health, and emerging research continues to explore the connection between gut health and blood sugar regulation. Choosing plain Greek yogurt over flavored varieties is important here, since many flavored yogurts contain significant added sugar that can work against the very benefits people are seeking when they choose yogurt in the first place. Cinnamon deserves a brief mention as well, since it's one of the most frequently discussed spices in relation to blood sugar. While cinnamon alone isn't a replacement for medication or a balanced diet, some studies have explored its potential role in supporting insulin sensitivity. Adding cinnamon to oatmeal, coffee, or yogurt is a simple, low-risk way to incorporate it into your routine, though it should be viewed as a complementary addition rather than a primary strategy. Apple cider vinegar is another topic that comes up frequently in these conversations. Some research suggests that consuming a small amount of vinegar before a meal may help reduce the blood sugar spike that follows, possibly by slowing stomach emptying or affecting how carbohydrates are absorbed. If you're interested in trying this, it's generally recommended to dilute apple cider vinegar in water rather than consuming it directly, and as always, checking with your doctor first is a good idea, particularly if you're taking other medications. Now let's shift focus slightly and talk about how these foods work best when combined together, rather than eaten in isolation. A meal that combines protein, healthy fats, and fiber-rich vegetables alongside a modest portion of whole grains or legumes tends to produce a much gentler blood sugar response than a meal consisting primarily of refined carbohydrates eaten alone. This is sometimes referred to as food combining, and it's one of the most practical strategies doctors recommend because it doesn't require eliminating entire food groups, but rather thinking more intentionally about how foods are paired together on your plate. Portion size is another factor worth mentioning, because even healthy foods can affect blood sugar significantly if eaten in very large quantities. This doesn't mean obsessively measuring every bite, but rather developing a general awareness of portion sizes, particularly for carbohydrate-containing foods like grains, fruits, and starchy vegetables. Many doctors recommend visualizing your plate divided into sections, with roughly half dedicated to non-starchy vegetables, a quarter to lean protein, and a quarter to whole grains or starchy vegetables as a simple, sustainable framework for everyday meals. Meal timing and consistency also play a meaningful role in this conversation. Eating meals at fairly consistent times throughout the day, rather than skipping meals and then eating very large portions later, tends to support more stable blood sugar levels overall. Skipping meals can sometimes lead to lower blood sugar followed by a stronger spike at the next meal, particularly if that next meal is large and carbohydrate-heavy. Building a consistent eating rhythm is something many doctors emphasize alongside food choices themselves. It's also worth mentioning the role of hydration in all of this. Staying well hydrated throughout the day supports your kidneys in helping to regulate blood sugar levels, and dehydration can sometimes contribute to higher blood sugar readings. Replacing sugary beverages, including sodas and many fruit juices, with water is one of the simplest and most impactful changes someone can make, since these beverages often contain significant amounts of sugar that enter the bloodstream very quickly. Physical activity, while not a food itself, deserves a brief mention here because of how closely it interacts with everything we've discussed. A short walk after a meal, for example, has been associated with helping muscles use glucose more efficiently, which can soften the blood sugar response to that meal. This doesn't mean intense exercise is required. Even light movement after eating can make a meaningful difference, and it pairs naturally with the food strategies we've covered throughout this video. Let's go a little deeper into why fiber, in particular, plays such a central role in almost everything we've discussed so far. Fiber is a type of carbohydrate that your body can't fully break down, which means it moves through your digestive system much more slowly than other carbohydrates. This slower movement has a direct effect on blood sugar because it delays how quickly glucose from a meal enters your bloodstream. There are actually two main types of fiber, soluble and insoluble, and both play slightly different roles. Soluble fiber, found in foods like oats, beans, and certain fruits, forms a gel-like substance during digestion that further slows sugar absorption. Insoluble fiber, found in foods like leafy greens and the skins of many vegetables, primarily supports digestive health and adds bulk, helping you feel fuller for longer. Together, these two types of fiber are part of why so many of the foods we've discussed today share this one common, powerful trait. It's also worth taking a closer look at protein's role in blood sugar management, since it comes up repeatedly throughout this list. Protein itself has a minimal direct effect on blood sugar, but its real value lies in how it interacts with other foods. When protein is eaten alongside carbohydrates, it slows down the overall digestion process, which softens the resulting blood sugar response. This is part of why pairing eggs with whole grain toast or beans with rice tends to produce a gentler blood sugar curve than eating those carbohydrate sources entirely on their own. Protein also plays a role in supporting muscle mass, and maintaining healthy muscle mass is itself connected to better insulin sensitivity over time, creating a kind of reinforcing cycle between diet and long-term metabolic health. Healthy fats deserve a similar closer look, particularly because fat has historically been misunderstood in conversations about blood sugar and weight management. Unlike refined carbohydrates, healthy fats found in foods like avocados, nuts, olive oil, and fatty fish don't cause significant spikes in blood sugar on their own. In fact, including a moderate amount of healthy fat in a meal can help slow gastric emptying, meaning food stays in your stomach a bit longer, which naturally leads to a slower, more gradual release of glucose into your bloodstream. This is part of why meals that completely eliminate fat in favor of more carbohydrates can sometimes lead to faster blood sugar spikes than a more balanced meal that includes a reasonable portion of healthy fat. Let's also spend a moment discussing the glycemic index, a concept that often comes up in conversations about food and blood sugar. The glycemic index ranks how quickly a particular food raises blood sugar compared to pure glucose. Foods with a high glycemic index, like white bread, white rice, and many processed snacks, tend to cause rapid spikes. Foods with a low glycemic index, Like most of what we've covered today, including leafy greens, legumes, and whole grains, lead to a slower, more gradual rise. While the glycemic index isn't a perfect tool on its own, since factors like portion size and food combinations also matter significantly, it remains a useful general guide for understanding why certain foods behave so differently inside the body. It's also helpful to understand how processed and refined foods fit into this entire picture, since avoiding them is often just as important as choosing the right foods to include. Many packaged snacks, sugary beverages, and refined baked goods are specifically engineered to be highly palatable, often containing combinations of refined sugar, refined flour, and unhealthy fats that are almost perfectly designed to spike blood sugar quickly. These foods typically lack the fiber, protein, and healthy fat content that naturally slow down digestion, which is exactly why they tend to produce such a sharp, fast blood sugar response compared to whole, minimally processed foods. Let's also touch briefly on cooking methods, since how a food is prepared can actually change its effect on blood sugar. Boiling, steaming, and roasting vegetables tends to preserve more fiber compared to methods that break food down extensively, like juicing, where much of the natural fiber gets stripped away in favor of pure liquid sugar from the fruit or vegetable. This is part of why eating a whole apple, for example, tends to have a gentler effect on blood sugar than drinking a glass of apple juice, even though both technically come from the same fruit. Similarly, overcooking certain starchy foods, like pasta, can sometimes increase how quickly they're digested, which is why cooking pasta to a firmer texture, often described as al dente, is occasionally mentioned by nutritionists as a small adjustment that can soften its overall blood sugar impact. Sleep, while not a food itself, is worth a brief mention here because of how closely it's connected to blood sugar regulation. Poor sleep has been associated with reduced insulin sensitivity, meaning your body becomes less efficient at processing glucose after meals when sleep is consistently inadequate. This connection is part of why doctors often look at the bigger lifestyle picture, including sleep quality, alongside diet when discussing blood sugar management with patients, since these factors don't operate in isolation from one another. It's also worth mentioning that snacking choices throughout the day can either support or work against everything we've discussed so far. A handful of nuts, a small serving of Greek yogurt, or vegetables paired with hummus tend to have a much gentler effect on blood sugar than reaching for crackers, chips, or sugary snack bars between meals. Building a habit of choosing protein, fiber, or healthy fat-based snacks, rather than purely carbohydrate-based ones, can meaningfully reduce the number of significant blood sugar spikes someone experiences throughout an average day. Before we wrap up, it's important to be clear that this video is intended purely for general educational and nutritional awareness. It is not meant to replace personalized medical or dietary advice from a doctor, dietitian, or other qualified healthcare professional. Blood sugar management can look very different from person to person depending on individual health conditions, medications, and other factors, so any significant dietary changes should always be discussed with your doctor first, especially if you're currently managing diabetes or taking medication that affects blood sugar. If you found this breakdown helpful, consider sharing it with a family member or friend who's working on managing their blood sugar, since small, practical changes like the ones covered today often make the biggest difference when shared and supported together. If this video helped you think differently about your next meal, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more videos like this.